a little bit about speaking of what Gleanster just mentioned, which is, email is the most widely used channel for all organizations for B2B and B2C, and that's whether you're a top performer or just basically someone who's just getting started. It's a tool that's important, but the reality is there are roles and responsibilities, and there are factors that drive the specific specific success that you're looking after. And this concept of permission in both the way you engage from a customer lifecycle perspective and the way that you acquire this is very important. And this is kind of a hint to the, hey, don't buy lists unless you really understand where they're coming from, but also understand once you have them how you behave with regard to them. The other thing that I'm going to dig a little bit into in this presentation is that idea of segmentation, because relevancy as it relates to personalization is extremely key, and it will drive a more holistic and one-on-one-like engagement. And although you may not be able to get to a one-on-one engagement, you can certainly make your end user feel far more engaged with you based on the way that you do your level of segmentation from an organizational perspective. And then, of course, how much do you automate? The idea of automating 5 emails in a row without really understanding what the customer journey is can be a problem. But you do want to obviously automate programs to drive efficiency based on known behaviors from an organizational perspective or a customer type perspective. So these are really key success factors from an organizational perspective. And I do love the fact, and a nod back to Ian's presentation, that he gave you a great definition on the concept of multi-channel versus cross-channel media coordination. Because the idea here is when you really talk about this, the idea of how you integrate across the multiple channels is where you get this better success, and people truly understand that you have your act together and that you're working closely. And I'll give a few tips and tricks as it relates to these areas on how we actually drive this level of success. So, as I look at many of these things, permission-based marketing is very important through the whole customer life cycle. So you can acquire a name or a list or a Twitter handle, whether it's paid, earned, or you've already owned it, but understanding how you're treating those and continuing to grow those and retain those customers becomes increasingly more important because people are used to many different touch points, and they're paying attention to whether or not you're using or misusing the way that you engage with them. So when you understand how this works, and that's kind of my fancy automation, I hope you guys don't mind that I have to have a little bit of fun with the way that we do some of these slides. But this idea is that it's cyclical, and the customer life cycle is very important, and understanding where you're at in that is going to be key. Because you certainly, once you acquire that, you have truly the permission on their behalf, once they've opted in, to ask a few more questions. Make it more relevant. You don't have to ask everything at once. So these ideas of doing that to retain and then even grow based on their purchasing behavior becomes increasingly more important as you talk about the kinds of customers that you have. But the way that we look at some of these things is there's the fundamentals that everyone uses, and then there are certain things that the top performers use from an organizational perspective. So I have a list of various different things, and some of the things that we've already heard about here is the concept of triggered messages. At a basic level, many people use that from a segmentation perspective and making sure you understand the demographics, or they are male or female, Mrs. Fields or Mr. Fields. I mean, we all do, of course, do shopping online, and we purchase lots of presents online. So really kind of make sure we understand the level of segmentation that's required, and make sure that you're using good segments and know which ones are active, and really make sure you do a little bit of list cleaning as a part of that. But there are the basics, but there's also, what are some of the top performers? Of course, you really want to get into the mailbox as it relates to deliverability, but there are more things that you can do from an organizational perspective that really helps grow this. So, for example, the transactional kinds of messages from an automation perspective, or activity-based triggers. So, for example, they opted into X, therefore you send them Y. They opted into your newsletter, so you can potentially offer them a discount. Those might be the kinds of things that you can actually throw together for your customers. I think about what's appropriate for these fundamentals. I think about the segmentation that we've already talked about, and there are so many different things that we can look at as we talk about the idea of cross-channel coordination. But just want to kind of put these in place, that there's a set of basics that you generally do, but there are the top performer activities. And we have a way of really looking at that from an organizational perspective. But I want to dig just a little bit into the cross-channel. And there's a lot of questions that I get both from our customers as well as when I'm on the road talking to folks, which is, I hear about cross-channel engagement. What does that really mean from an email and a Twitter and a Facebook example? You know, the first idea in which to start here is thinking a little bit about what you start with. Most folks are doing, 72% are doing emails, and we know that you have to have a really compelling subject line. So, you know, if this is the first foray into Twitter and Facebook, then think about that. Start with your very compelling subject line. Then take that subject line and build on it a little bit, add a hashtag, maybe a shortened URL, and you have a perfectly good usable tweet that can be retweeted, because the maximum characters are 140. So this is an opportunity for you to be able to really run with that and send them to the same landing experience that you're sending them on the landing page. And then if you think a little bit about Facebook, Facebook's a little bit more about pictures. So you can build on that 120 characters from the Twitter, maybe remove the hashtag, add a picture that you use in your email, and all of a sudden you have a cross-channel communication, and being able to have a tool that helps you do that is going to be very key. So, you know, I encourage you to start thinking about just some of the basic steps to start getting the momentum and the message of this cross-channel engagement. Same kind of voice, use and reuse your content. Think about the relevancy in the channel that you're in. So, for example, use hashtags in Twitter, but you don't really use those in Facebook. But Facebook, you would use pictures, but you can send them all to a similar landing experience. Also, one of the things that we like to encourage our customers to do is really walk a mile in your customer's shoes. What are the activities that they do to complete a task or what they're trying to accomplish? And kind of write this roadmap out. If you're thinking about a specific kind of customer, then you have a chance to be able to really be able to create a campaign that relates to them, and you can segment against that behavior, and you can create a couple of these kinds of roadmaps or day-in-life activities. And I've done something really simple here. I've just provided an example that we all could appreciate, which is we all go to the movies, and one way or the other we have participated in certain loyalty programs. So this is about, you know, basically what happens in the day of a life. The customer, you know, looks for a movie they want to go see, and they do it in different ways. They find the kinds of movies maybe in somewhere that's near them. They may use Fandango. You don't, you know, those are the kinds of things that you'd want to be able to do. On the marketing side, that's what you do. So, for example, in this particular case, you know, track the analytic data. You know, where are they accessing the website from? You know, how are they signing up? If they've logged in with an email, to where you can provide them a discount kind of message, or you can actually suggest that they look at a few different things here, like a trailer watched, or really kind of understand a little bit more. And we build on this example, whereas, you know, once you've kind of figured out, well, they know what show they want to see, then they book a ticket, they set up reminders, and they contact friends, and you can see that there's a complementary marketing strategy on the right side. And just to kind of build it out, then there's like, hey, what happens after you attend the movie? You want these people to come back again, maybe join the loyalty program, but the idea is you see how this can work. So I love this idea of rating a movie, because that's the community-based kinds of activities, so you can generally see how, by understanding the steps that your customers are taking, you have a chance to align a marketing strategy in the most effective way. So those are just the simple ideas, and I figure everybody can relate to kind of going to a movie and what happens about going to a movie. But how do you kind of end up in what you heard from Ian as a top performer marketer? We look at it in a couple ways, which is there's an entry level that people do a certain number of things, and then as they start to grow, you start seeing a lot more alignment to different kinds of activities. And when I showed you the basic to the top performers, here's generally a list of those kinds of things. So, you know, the first thing we all have to worry about, get into the inbox, obviously. There are tactics associated with that, and when you start thinking about deliverability, there are more sophisticated deliverability with things such as a smart inbox that you'll want to be looking at in levels 2, 3, and continually. So it's not that that ever goes away. But as you start thinking about the concept of really making a connection and engagement, then of course that's where the A/B testing comes in, the segmentation, as you start getting to level 3, the triggered messages. And this is effectively a journey that we see many of our customers take. Most folks start at the basic, and to be able to get to that kind of, all-important top performing, you generally move to the right, but some of these things you continue to refine and tool against, but really kind of creating a framework in which anyone has the ability to work against. And what's the benefit of that? I actually heard from Ian that top performers have, on average, 5 to 7%. We did an analysis of the customers that we manage as an organization in the first half of this year, and of the nearly 1,500 managed accounts, and that is almost the same as the registrations here, which I thought was interesting, 1,588, pretty close. As you can start to see that the open rates get progressively better as you start applying some of these different levels. So there's a way to track and understand. So, for example, most folks that are at the basic level, they're not really looking at return on investment. They may not even be really tracking revenue, but as you can see, it becomes increasingly more important as you move to the right. Open rates and click rates start to improve dramatically. So there's just a real way to start tracking this, and we really find that this is the best approach from an organization to understand what to employ and what their priorities are from an organizational perspective. And then finally, create yourself a roadmap on where you want to get on to that journey. So if you're at the basic now, or if you're at the contact level now, how do you want to kind of move forward? So here's kind of a general roadmap that you can put in place at an organizational level to really kind of take you through the processes, because it's kind of hard to basically start at basic and move all the way to top performer overnight. But set some goals up on how you actually want to approach becoming a top performer as an email marketer.